What's going on, everybody? 3 streams, 3 days. Back with Ted this Wednesday. We couldn't do it last Wednesday. We both had some stuff come up, but we are back talking 49er ball. I put it in the description on Twitter. I said, while the Niners are in West Virginia, we're on here talking ball. I even did the in my Instagram story for the stream tonight. I had the John Denver song playing over the image of us streaming tonight, so I thought that would be fitting. But welcome back, Ted. How you doing, man?
Good, Aaron. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So we have, me and you were corresponding before about some of these topics, and a lot of them we're kind of on the same page as far as like some of the stuff we were thinking about. I guess the first one I really wanted to get into right away, since it's kind of like the biggest news going, is just all the injury situations that are going on with the team. The loss of Emmanuel Mosley, Nick Bosa's groin, Jimmy Ward's hand, and just all the other stuff that's going on. What is your concern level as far as like every time we seem to have a game, we lose a starter or two at least? And is this sustainable? Am I overreacting? Should we sit people when we play on turf? I mean, all that stuff. What's your take on this? Kind of seems like a reoccurring headache that we have every single year.
Yeah, I mean it's a big concern, especially looking at how many injuries we've had throughout the whole Shanahan tenure. So I mean we're constantly one of the most injured teams. Obviously, 2020, the most injured team since 2012. That year was just record-setting. I think we had something like $105 million on IR out of like a $190 million cap or 180. Huge, a majority of our cap was on IR, a lot of our big stars. As far as sitting people, we obviously can't sit people for a whole game and win the game. And we got to win the games to get to the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, when you're up 15 with, what was it, 6 minutes left when Emmanuel Mosley got injured.
Yeah.
I was starting to wonder if it might be time to pull the starters at that point. I mean, I'll just say this. I really love Kyle Shanahan. I am a Shana fan, if you will. But that doesn't mean that we can't be critical of him and say sometimes when maybe we disagree. It's enough time for a team to come back and beat you, even if you're up 15. In this case, though, the Panthers had only scored one touchdown in 50-plus minutes. So seemed less likely that they would. Now, it's complicated, right? Because when Nick Bosa didn't play in the second half, it was a noticeable difference in our defense. They definitely seemed to be able to move the ball better. It was not just like, oh, we're going to shut them down every time like we were at first. So, yeah, I mean, it's tough. But, there's other things too, like, Jimmy Ward's hand. Apparently he broke that on kick coverage.
Yeah, that was definitely something that I was like, really? That's what we're doing with him his first game back.
Yeah, and that's complicated too, because my initial reaction is like, why is he on kick coverage? And then we saw a couple of those kick returns, including a couple long ones, one that set up a TD, and that I'm pretty sure that was the same one where Robbie Gould injured his knee. So, I mean, I guess I can see why you want him in there, but my gut reaction is there are less expendable people that could probably do a pretty close job. One of them came back in limited practice today, Tarvarius Moore. I was excited to see that. And he's been real good on our coverage teams, especially punt coverage, downing the ball inside the 10. But yeah, the injuries are a big concern. I'll tell you, I was already concerned about injuries before the Carolina Panther game. There was, a lot of fanfare before the Panther game about the Niners defense being number one overall statistically. And I tweeted out something like, well, that's likely to slip if Eric Armstead and Kinlaw, don't come back soon. Because, I think people say, well, the defense played well against the Rams. And I say, well, the Rams had all second and third stringers on their interior offensive line.
Yep.
And, um, the Panthers' offensive line isn't great either. They have, like, I think, a third string rookie left tackle. And I think outside of maybe Taylor Moton, that O-line isn't maybe real great. So I don't think they've really been tested. Although I did notice even in the Panthers game early on, they were running up the middle a lot more easily than I had seen teams do to us
Mm-hmm.
this entire season. So there was one play where we stuffed them in the backfield, and that kind of slowed them down from doing that. Also, Mosley's pick six slowed them down from doing that. Once you get a big lead, it's harder for teams to stick with the run against you. They tend to start to try to pass to try and catch up. But yeah, injuries are a huge concern. Mosley's a huge concern. Um, with as far as we're in a kind of a cool situation with Jason Verrett potentially coming back before too long. I tweeted out that I thought it might be similar to the Rams in 2021 when Woods tore his ACL the same week that they traded for OBJ. And it could be that same type of thing. I'm not saying that, Verrett will be better than Mosley, but I think he could be comparable if he can play close to that 2020 level that we saw for him. And so hopefully that's the case. But, Jason Verrett obviously has had tons of injuries, and I'd be concerned about him staying healthy the entire season too.
It just seems like every game, notable guys go down. And you're right. You could put all the stats up of what we've done, but I want to see this defense go against, the Kansas Cities of the world. Of course, a fully healthy version of this defense, not the current one. And then if they are doing well against that offense too, then I'll say, okay, this is legit. I'm not saying that they're not good. I'm just like you. I always have like a little bit of a pause. I don't get caught up so much in all of these statistics and lists and things that they put on the screen. I'm like, you guys do realize we have like so much season left to go still. So I'm not negative. I don't know. I like to look at things, the full picture before we go out and we start throwing out best ever, greatest defense of all time defense. Like, come on, guys, dude, we've played like some pretty scrubby ass teams here. So let's chill.
And QBs too.
And quarterbacks. Yeah. So everybody, it's great to get excited, but let's have a little bit of let's think with our brains and not, everybody gets so caught up in like all this stuff so early in the season, and I think everybody just needs to chill out a bit. I want to say really quickly say hello to the chat here. We got Mariah faithfully in here from the 49er Faithfully podcast. Brian Culp, he is a mainstay in at least my stream, and I want to say hopefully he comes into yours too. Very supportive individual. I've been seeing David McNew on other people's streams. I didn't know that he did it, but he's dropped in on some other people's streams and been part of some panels. So David, very much appreciated that you are here. And CarCast has jumped in here too, saying what's up. So appreciate all you guys coming in here and supporting the stream. I appreciate you guys coming in yesterday and supporting the stream with Joe Shasky. Something that took a long time to have happen, but I'm glad it did. I gotta say, Ted, he's probably one of the coolest people that I've dealt with who are from radio, because it's kind of hit or miss sometimes, especially with people who do it as a job. And if you ever get a chance to have him on your channel once you get going, it's an easy guest. He's very talkative, very excitable. And if you like Star Wars, you have the inside track to his heart. So yeah, he's a real cool guy. I would love to have Bonta on one of these days too, but we're on here now. We're talking. So let's get back to that.
The Butcher Boy.
Yeah, his story is very interesting. I didn't realize he was actually a butcher, which is pretty cool. One of the things that was kind of a lot of people are getting excited about, and a lot of people are kind of making a big deal out of and posting all these stats and saying, look at Jimmy's record. Is the Jimmy Garoppolo playing, at least comparable football to, maybe 2019, and he's playing pretty well. And a lot of people are making a big deal out of it. Again, I'm one of those people that always kind of wants to see the whole picture. Um, is Jimmy G better than we've seen before, or is this just too early to tell, or is it really just the same Jimmy? And the bottom is going to fall out at some point soon, and he'll remind us of exactly who he is.
Better luck, I would say. Um, yeah, I mean, Jimmy, we've had some good luck. We had against the Rams, we had their corner 2 and corner 3. Troy Hill and Nick Long were both out for Monday Night Football. Also, their number 1 defensive end, Leonard Floyd, pretty sure still doesn't have a sack all season. I know he didn't have one going into the Cowboys game. I'm pretty sure he didn't get one in that game. So, and then their defensive end too. I don't even know who that is, and certainly for good reason. So you got a team of Aaron Donald always, but outside of him, there's not a lot of help for him on the defensive line. And obviously they have Jalen Ramsey, who's one of the best defensive backs in the NFL, and Bobby Wagner. But none of those guys have a lot of help at any of those 3 levels. I think Jordan Fuller was back in the Rams game, but I don't think he played particularly well. Now and then for the Carolina game, Jeremy Chin went on to IR last week as their star free safety.
Mm-hmm.
Xavier Woods was a game time decision with a hammy, I believe, or a growing hamstring, I believe, and he didn't play. And their defensive end, they obviously have Brian Burns, who's an outstanding defensive end, one of the top defensive ends in the NFL. But then on the other side, they have another really good guy named Frankie Louvu, who didn't play, and Shaq Thompson. I'm going to claim ignorance, and I know the name. I don't know how good he is. I think he's a decent linebacker, but he didn't play.
He's
so that's a
okay.
lot of guys who didn't play. And then the big one for me, at least seeing it how it played out in the game, was J.C. Horn,
Yep.
who is this all-world already, star cornerback, lockdown corner. And he hurt his hip somewhere in the first half and didn't play a lick of the second half. So Jimmy's had good luck that way, and then he's had some good luck where he's thrown some errant balls that were imminently pickable. Basically hitting the guys in the numbers or the breadbasket, and the defenders dropped him. So yeah, he has 5 TDs and 1 interception. But there's no reason that couldn't be 5-3 or 5-4. And that's what I sort of expect by the end of the season. He's always been kind of a 2-to-1 ratio guy, so 5-to-1. It's possible he got better. I'm not going to rule that out. And like you said, we'll see as we play tougher teams. But things that worry me about Jimmy G are, physical pressure from a defensive line in his face, or pass rushers wherever they come from in his face.
Mm-hmm.
And then, sort of that figurative pressure of a really good quarterback or offense putting up a lot of points on the scoreboard, putting us at a deficit where he's really trying to push and reach to do things that he's not as comfortable doing to try and get us to catch up. That's where I really have concerns about Jimmy G moving forward.
It's weird. It's a weird thing for me because we could have a worse situation at quarterback, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's kind of, if you don't mind me cutting you off real quick, it's kind of funny. I've had some conversations, some arguments with people, and they say, well, what about Brock Purdy? You're not asking for him. I'm like, no, I'm not asking for Brock Purdy. I'm not saying that Jimmy isn't our best option. I'm just saying he's not a good option.
Yeah, be realistic with it.
And then I always throw in a little jab. I'll say he's not even mediocre, because to me, mediocre is like 16th to 20th. And I see Jimmy as more like 20th to 25th sort of ranked QB in the league.
It's unfortunate that I feel the same. Well, maybe it's fortunate. I don't know. I feel exactly the same way. I think he's in like the 20 range. A lot of people are like, oh, he's definitely top 15. I'm like, really?
his stats might be in the last couple games, but let's see it over a season, and then I'll be happy to apologize.
Exactly. I'm the same way. I'm like, I've seen enough of the Jimmy Garoppolo story to know kind of how it ends, but I will be pleasantly surprised and will be the first person to come on YouTube and be like, hey, I was wrong. But there's a good majority of the fan base that will throw his record out there and talk about his record. And what bothers me about the record argument is that you take out the defense that is so incredible most of the time. You take out a play caller who, when he's on his game, can be pretty special in Kyle Shanahan. And you take out the run game and the litany of running backs that this team has had over Jimmy Garoppolo's tenure. So it's like, it's weird. No, I'd rather have him than CJ Beathard or Nick Mullins. But, they're like not even NFL caliber quarterbacks. Some of these guys should not have been drafted. I mean, you're comparing, maybe quarterbacks that might maybe play in like the, Canadian Football League or Arena League, maybe. I mean, that's kind of where we're going when we compare the Jimmy Garoppolo to these guys. But again, at the same time, I am fortunate that he's here because he knows this offense. He knows the system. He's got people on the team that like him. So in the worst case scenario, he is the best option. And I do feel comfortable with them in that sense. But it's also when we start playing teams where they have quarterbacks that can really do some things, like a Kansas City, like a Chargers, teams that have quarterbacks that are game changers who can take over a game. And while the defense might be losing guys and being gashed and gassed in a game, the quarterback can sit there, cover a bunch of warts, and take over. Jimmy's not that guy. Jimmy is the running game going well. The defense, he just kind of comes along for the ride. He's had a couple games where he's surprised us, but for the most part, we kind of know what he is. So, like, it's kind of this weird catch-22. It's a double-edged sword. That's where I get a lot of grief and a lot of flack from people, fellow content creators, fans on Twitter who think like I'm super hateful on Jimmy. I'm just, I don't know. It's hard to explain. Like, I kind of know what he is, and like I have to like, it's always in the back of my mind. But like you said, if he can prove us wrong, both of us will come on here on a Wednesday show and be like, we're not worthy. He was so great, but I don't see that right now. But well, maybe we're wrong. Maybe this is the year that he becomes like the Eagles quarterback when they won the Super Bowl a couple years ago when what's his name? Foles took
Nick
over.
Foles,
Yeah. So
now I'd one up you and just say, another thing that gets discounted when people talk about Jimmy winning is the weapons. I mean, obviously we see what Debo is. We've seen Kittle. I think we'll see more of it this season. But the one that kills me is Ayuk. I was really excited to see him with Lance, someone who can throw deep and outside the numbers and likes to do so and is talented at doing so. It's just I'm heartbroken for him just because he doesn't get a lot of targets, and it's not because he's not open. That he gets open, and I just feel like Jimmy locks on to whoever he has sort of predetermined. He does make some reads. I'm not gonna say he's a one-read quarterback, but he does tend to lock on, and so that's a area of frustration for me as well.
Ty Alston, who also I want to say what's up to because he's another supporter of the stream and on my Twitter. He says Aaron keeps it 100% on who James is, as we all should. Yeah, James Garoppolo. It's so weird how some people, it really is a Trey Lance / Garoppolo kind of like people have taken their sides. And I just tell people like, listen, this kid that we were waiting for to become the starter, it was his time, you know what I mean? Everything was set up for him this year. All the pieces, the drafting of Danny Gray, him and Ayuk having a great offseason together, the defense. It just felt like one of those years where like he would have come along at his own pace. The defense would have been what it was. And all of a sudden, I mean, Kyle Shanahan even said it. He said his way that he wanted kind of Trey to come along was kind of like Jimmy in 2019 because Jimmy didn't have a ton of starts either at that point, right? So Jimmy's 2019 journey was very much like they put very little on him, and then as the season progressed, more and more was given to him. And I think that was kind of the plan for 2019, and I felt that would have been the best plan. And it's just unfortunate that that's not going to happen. And then it's unfortunate because next year it's going to start all over again. I've never seen
Absolutely.
the kid gets so much unrealistic expectation put on him. And all these people that say that Jimmy's the better option in the short term always go back to the win argument. And they always discount the defense and the run game. And so to me, it's just it was an unfortunate situation. But again, both of us will agree Jimmy is the best option that we got. We're going to roll with them. We're 49er fans through and through. But if you had to put a gun to both of our heads and ask us who we'd rather have at quarterback, we're both going to say Trey Lance. And if that makes us not real fans, then I don't know. There's probably a good 60% of this fan base that ain't real fans then, because a lot of them feel the exact same way. But I don't know. It's just this weird like territorial thing that's happened with 49er fans this year. That like if it both sides of the argument, even for some of us that love Trey, or some of us that loved, there's like this really weird divide, and it's unfortunate that it's separated, but it's sports, man. It is what it is. It's not that big of a deal in the real, in real life, but both of us wanted to see the kid get it this year and do his thing, and unfortunately, we're just going to have to wait another year. And Ty Alston said it best. Poor IU, constantly getting open, yet never getting the ball. Same thing with Danny Gray. I feel like he's not even a factor. Even that one throw that Jimmy gave to him was absolutely a duck. I mean, it was just like it was like a dying duck over the middle. I'm like, oh my God, that's it? That's all you got, man?
I made a joke about that today because Danny is out with an illness today, and I mockingly tweeted that Danny's already sick of playing with Jimmy G.
Yeah,
Which is
that's pretty good.
because the throw was as soon as I saw him pull back and launch, I was like, oh boy, here we go. How far off is this going to be? And it was off and could have been easily intercepted. The one thing I will say though is even though Jimmy doesn't throw deep well and we risk interception, like I was still glad to see it because you still got to do it. You got to stretch out the defense and get them out of the box so that they're not playing 8-9 guys in the box all the time. If one gets intercepted here and there, it's an arm punt, right? I mean, so not ideal and not like something you want to be happening all the time, but not something where I'd be like, oh, he doesn't throw well deep, don't ever do it again, right? You still got to do it. And maybe by doing it, he'll get better. I don't know. I don't really think so, but we'll see. And like my whole thing with Jimmy G is like, yeah, like you're kind of saying, like we're both Niner fans. Like I root for Jimmy G every Sunday or Monday or Thursday, whenever he plays, but the other 6 days a week, that depends on how he played. Right. And that depends on how much praise I give him. I like to think I'm pretty objective about it. I mean, you'll see my live tweets during games from time to time. And like I'll say, nice throw, or like that was a prayer, the one to Tevin Coleman on the sideline. You could even tell when the announcers were announcing, like, and Jimmy G, oh, what a great catch!
Yeah, that was a really strange throw.
That was a great
Coleman.
throw. I mean, so.
Ty Olson says, poor Danny Gray is just out there doing cardio, running for no reason. I know. It's funny. One tweet that got me a lot of flack and got, I guess, people to unfollow me is that I said that Danny Gray will become obsolete, and I feel bad for him. And now that Jimmy's the quarterback, he's never going to see the ball. And a lot of people were like, I don't know. But it's true. I mean, have we seen Danny Gray? And when we did see him, did Jimmy even get close to hitting him with that pass? No. So some people were like, well, we can get him on some slants and he can run after the catch. And I'm like, dude, how often do people catch slants and go 80 yards like on a regular? Not very much. So unless the defense is playing like quarters coverage and he just happens to run underneath everybody, I don't see that happening. But hey, look, like you said, at the end of the day, we're all 49er fans. We're going to root for Jimmy. But if you want our honest opinion, we'd rather have Trey Lance at quarterback. And that's just the way that it is. And if you don't like it, there's other streams you can watch and go and They'll piss pee in their pajamas and talk always super positive about everything and never bring up any negative points about the 49ers. And I'm just not that person. And I know Ted is, and I watch his tweets all day. And then he's pretty much like me, just kind of like put stuff out there. And a lot of people get all ruffled in their feathers for it. And I don't really understand why people take stuff so personal, but I guess it is what it is. But speaking of injuries that we were talking about before, the question to you, and I've kind of thought about this too, who replaces Emmanuel Mosley in this lineup? Do you want to bring in pretty much constantly injured Jason Verrett because his upside is really good? Would you put the rookie Womack out there? Would you put Dante Johnson out there? Would you put Diamador Lenore out there? Would you bring in another corner too? Would you bring in Darqueze Dennard for a depth piece? Because he looked really good in the preseason in training camp. What's your take on that whole situation?
I mean, definitely I want to see Verrett once he's healthy. As far as right this second, I still am unclear as to why Womack isn't playing nickel corner. I mean, I guess it's because Lenore is better in the run fit, but I'm pretty sure Womack is better in coverage.
Right.
And I know he played some boundary corner at Toledo. And I know he played some boundary corner in camp this summer in preseason. So, and he did even a little in the game there in Carolina. So yeah, I mean, my first choice is I'd like to see Sammy Womack out there. I think if you're happy with Lenore, you leave him there at nickel. Try and do as little shuffling as possible and make one guy come in and do it. I think you give Womack the chance, or Ambry Thomas played there last year, but I guess he had a really rough camp. So I'm for whatever reason I'm a little more confident in Samuel Womack right now. And maybe it is you put Womack at nickel and bump Lenore out to the boundary, but then you're switching two positions. I think that's always a little riskier than just at least one, you can isolate it. And I saw some people were unhappy with Lenore for the game on Sunday because he got cooked about at least 3 times by DJ Moore. But, I was telling people DJ Moore is a really underrated wide receiver, especially in the middle of the field. He is the only receiver ever, as far as I know, at least I'm pretty sure, in the history of the NFL to have back-to-back 1,200-yard plus seasons. So
wow.
three seasons in a row, 1,200 plus yards. Now, he only had a few TDs, so that's the knock on him. But in the middle of the field, it's all about the yards. So Lenore getting cooked by him a few times, it doesn't bother me as much as, maybe some other people. Dante Johnson is really versatile. He can play nickel, he can play boundary, he can play safety, but he's kind of like equal opportunity, not very good at most of them. I really feel like he was best at safety. So I'm not really wild to see him at nickel or boundary corner. If you ask, if it's my choice, I guess I would say I think it should be Womack or Ambry and keep Lenore at the nickel to like I said, minimize the number of variables.
Yeah, I'd rather have Womack there only because I'd rather keep Verrett in the holster a little bit longer. You know what I mean? Use him for the stretch run. If we look like we're going to win our division, which is a good chance this year we could, and still only have say like a 11-7, 11-6, 10-7 record, I'm fine. Because the way I look at it, Ted, is the Niners are one of those teams that their seeding really doesn't matter. They get in the playoffs. I mean, they showed last year they could win on the road twice in Dallas and in Green Bay. I'm not saying that translates into this year, but I'm not really worried about them because say that they make what looks like they're going to be a playoff run and they start resting some guys down the stretch, man, they get into the playoffs and they got all that ammunition ready to go again. And you have Verrett sitting there who hasn't really played much, or if he's played, he played a little bit towards the end of the season as like an ace in the hole kind of thing. That would be awesome. I would definitely bring back someone like Darquise Dennard and just have him there as another depth piece. If anything, I'd have him over Dante Johnson, but I guess Dante Johnson's done enough for this franchise to earn him like a lifetime pass. No matter what happens, he's always kind of like right there for us. He's kind of like the dude that you call in if you're working like a job who only works when there's like an emergency, and he's always there for you. Otherwise, you never see him. He's that dude. He's the emergency shift guy. So, yeah, I'd rather see Womack out there. That'd be a good learning experience. I don't want to see Ambry Thomas. I don't think he's very good, to be honest with you. He showed me enough last year. He just, I don't know. He just some guys. He doesn't seem like he has. People say he has some decent physical traits. I just don't see him. Once you see a guy like Javarius Ward, he just has everything you want in a corner. He's tall, he's long, he's got long arms. He turns his head, for crying out loud.
That's key.
That's something we haven't had in a long time. Even back in the days when we had like Carlos Rogers or any of those guys, those corners back when we were, during the Harbaugh years, some of those guys still never turned their freaking heads. He's one of the
Witherspoon.
Yeah, Kello Witherspoon. Yeah, like he's one guy I hope they can keep healthy all year. Him, Hufanga, and Bosa are three players that if we were to lose them for an extended period of time, it could cost us. So those are three guys I worry about. But yeah, Womack to me would be the best option. Keep Verrett in the holster for as long as you can. Don't displace Lenore. And of course, Javarius Ward, if he can stay healthy. Mazel tov to him, because he's been nothing short of amazing since we've gotten him. So,
well, the good news for Mooney Ward is he'll probably be not real busy for a while, as teams will undoubtedly target whoever is at the other boundary corner until they prove that they can be at least reasonably close to as good as Mooney, right? I mean, I think it's going to be like Richard Sherman in 2019, where teams didn't even bother to try and throw his direction. They just exclusively went at the other side of the field. I think we'll see a lot of that. And while you were talking, it reminded me the one silver lining to all these injuries is that, so far we had Jordan Matthews in camp with the ACL, obviously Trey with the ankle week 2, and now Emmanuel Mosley week 5 with the ACL. But those are the only 3 for sure season-ending injuries. Javon Kinlaw feels like it could end up being that way, or it could just be a little spotty here and there, but never really fully back. I don't know. We'll see. But at least so far, only 3 that are confirmed out for the season. And so that's the good news, is that as of now, everyone else is supposed to get back at some point.
With me, the signing of Ty McGill from Minnesota, who played really well in the preseason, and a lot of people think it's a sneaky good signing. And then, of course, we have in the interior playing for Kinlaw. What's his name?
Ridgeway?
No, not Ridgeway. I always forget his name.
Spence?
But he's one of my favorite. He's one of our favorite. Yeah, Kevin Givens. I honestly don't see. Like, I wouldn't miss Kinlaw. I think Kinlaw is what he does. I mean, say what you want about Armstead, but he can do some things inside when he's matched up with Bosa and other good pass rushers. He does his job. Shasky is not a fan of Kinlaw. He thought he was a bad pick. He hasn't done anything. He's always hurt. And I mean, I've seen enough. A lot of people have seen enough. People keep. The Niners have this thing where, and a lot of fans do too. If he could just get healthy, I'm pretty sure he's never going to be. If you talk to anybody who had a similar knee issue, and I think it was Jesse Naylor from Last Second Sports, he was talking about certain things that happen when you have a chronic knee issue, and the swelling and the fluid is one of those things that kind of leaks or kind of talks of arthritic knee, like those kind of things. He's going to have that for his whole life. And they knew that drafting him. It's not his fault. It's the Niners' fault. they had his medical, they knew what he was, and they still went and drafted him. So, and you draft a top 15 player, he's supposed to be an all pro, a top 15 player in the draft, and he's nothing but a space eater. That's why I say Kevin Givens, I think he's a better player, honestly. And he's, doesn't even get any of the the talk because of his positioning and where he was drafted, or I don't even know if he was drafted.
He was undrafted. Yeah,
he was undrafted. So yeah, that's how I feel about all that and the injuries. Mosley, huge loss. I hope they still keep him. They're probably going to bring him back at a discounted rate, I would assume. Something with incentives if he can stay healthy, which it works for us because we are kind of a money ball team. But at the same time, it kind of sucks because in the NFL, it could end at any point, and if you don't got that cash money, man, it's like, you might have to do another job once you leave the game, and that would kind of suck, right? You're in your 30s, you retire at 35, and you have a good amount of money in the bank, like you never have to work again a day in your life. So hopefully, I don't know, maybe the Niners do good by him and they still compensate him. I don't know if you can do that, but I mean, we'll see. If it's incentive based and he hits his incentives and then he gets his money, then it won't matter in the end. But unfortunate, sucks. Like I said, little by little, these injuries they start to pick away at this defense and all those statistics and all that stuff that everybody keeps flashing on the screen. Eventually, they ain't going to mean nothing. So hopefully, this is kind of the end of it, and maybe, like you said, the Kinlaw and the Armstead stuff is they're not season ending, and maybe we can hold on, but we can't really do with much more injuries on the home front for sure.
that's true, especially in the short term. No doubt about it.
Speaking of injuries, Nick Bosa, rest him or play him against the Atlanta Falcons?
I mean, my first gut reaction was rest him. Then I saw Samson Ebicam show up on the injury report today with the strained Achilles, which would put us down to just Omenahu and Drake Jackson and I guess Hyder as defensive ends. I guess that should never be the way you make your decisions, but it definitely influences me a little bit when you look at like we said, no Armstead, no Kinlaw, no Bosa, no Ebukam, and that's our entire starting line from week one would be out, right? And so, but yeah, I'm leaning towards rest him. I mean, I'd rather lose to the Falcons because we didn't have Bosa than to not have him for the big games where we're really going to need him later in the season. So, including next week I really want him for the Chiefs.
Me too. Yeah, I'm the same way. I'd say rest him. Hopefully, Ebicom can find a way to play. It's weird because I work a lot I work on my feet all the time. So like I do have a sore Achilles from here time to time and a heel just from because you're always on your feet. So I get that. I don't think that's like a precursor to a more serious injury. But man, geez, you're right. That'd be all four starting guys. So like, talk about depth till you're blue in the face. Depth is only good when you don't have to actually use it. You know what I mean? When you actually have to start testing all that depth, and then all of a sudden the depth gets hurt, and then it's like, now what? So, yeah, I would rest Bosa unless they are just dead set that he's not going to hurt himself worse. But they're playing on turf again. The Niners have this bugaboo when it comes to artificial turf.
Yep.
Other teams playing it too, but for some reason, when the Niners play on it, they lose guys to like season-ending injuries. I don't know. They don't have the right shoes. I don't know if guys don't stretch enough. Who knows? All I know is Niners turf bad mix. It's like,
I think it's part of it is just that our grass is so good. Like we have the best grass in the NFL for our field and for our practice fields, and so then any turf is a big step back. And then Kittle brought up an interesting point. I don't know if you saw, but he was basically saying, it's bad enough to have turf where you don't have to, where you could actually have grass, but it's even worse when almost every turf is different at every stadium. Like, why not? If you're gonna have to have turf, why can't you make it all the same so guys can at least get used to it, and then they know what shoes to wear on it. It's not a different pair of shoes for every turf, and oh well, maybe I got the right shoes for the turf, but now it's wet. I don't know. There's just there needs to be more uniformity. I understand that turf is a little bit cheaper than grass, but the one thing I think some people miss out on the cost whole equation is that um, it's not just the cost of installing the turf and maintaining it compared to the grass. It's also the fact that you can't have as many events like concerts on real grass without killing it or ruining it. And so it's an opportunity cost for other events within that stadium. So when people say they're being cheap, that's kind of part of the reason why.
Yeah, with grass, eventually, if you have stages and other sporting events, you're going to tear that thing to the point where it's, you can't. And then it becomes dangerous playing on the grass as well because you have
Yeah.
sod coming loose or whatever. But I hate that every year. It feels like deja vu. It feels like the movie Groundhog Day. I feel like we've dealt with this like 10 million times, and once again, it's an issue. Let's go to the offensive line. Right guard. What's with the swapping of right guards with Brunskill and Spencer Burford? I know the Niners did it in the late 80s and early 90s with Steve Wallace and Bubba Paris, but what is going on with what's your take on it? What's up with that?
Well, I think it's to make sure that Brunskill is kind of ready to go wherever he's needed. But I think ultimately they're trying to get him in to replace Brendel at center, because I just looked at what happened in camp, and they were switching reps back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And at some point, I made a comment where I said basically, at some point, it's better to make the wrong decision and just go with it than to make no decision and keep swapping these guys in and out, because offensive line is all about continuity and knowing what the guy next to you is going to do in a certain situation, so you don't have to like look and see. You're on the same page. So to me, so ultimately, like, my thought was like they must really like Brunskill better than Brendel, because Brunskill was having trouble snapping the ball, and that's like center 101. Like if your center can't snap, like get him out of there.
Why is he a center? That's like the main
Yeah,
job of the center.
yeah. And so clearly there was something they liked about him enough that they were overlooking that, or they were thinking this will get better, and it should get better in time. I mean, the reason why these other centers are better at snapping is because they've done it a gazillion times. And Brunskill, he did a little bit in 2020, but other than that, I don't think a lot. So, I mean, ultimately, I think that's the plan, is to platoon them. Burford is, in my opinion, definitely the long-term answer at right guard. So, like, the sooner you get him, the more reps, the better. The better he'll be. And I think it's to replace Brendel at center, or at least to be ready to, in case something happens along that interior offensive line. Then Brunskill can plug in anywhere, and he's not coming in ice cold like he would be, especially coming off a hamstring injury. So I mean, because he missed the last almost month of camp too, practices. So that's sort of my theory on that.
To me, just get your 5 best offensive linemen on the field at once. If that's Brunskill at center and Burford at guard, so be it. You're right, and Burford and Banks are both going to be the long-term answers at right and left guard, unless Burford somehow gets kicked out to tackle, which I guess he can play. I mean, offensive line hasn't been horrible. They've actually been a semi-bright spot considering what we thought they were going to be. Jimmy hasn't. I mean, Jimmy's taken some shots, but I think more of it has to do with the fact that it was a long developing play and he got whacked. But from what they would look like with Trey to what they look like now with Jimmy, which I kind of sad that that's the case. Yeah, they haven't been too bad to be honest with you. In the run game, they've opened up some pretty massive gaping holes for Jeff Wilson Jr., who's been a nice surprise. I've always been a big Jeff Wilson Jr. fan. That he's
Me
always
too.
he's always been kind of the guy in the background. The fact that he's getting his chance to play and play well is big props. So, yeah, hopefully the offensive line thing gets sorted out soon. Like you said, if you have two, you have none. You rather have the decision, make it the wrong one, and then go to the next guy. But it is what it is. Long season still to go, and there's a lot more things that are going to happen. But yeah, get the best five on the field, and go from there for sure.
The one thing I'll say about O-line, McKivitz did really well when he came into the Rams game for Trent Williams.
Yeah,
Jalen Moore
Jalen
struggled in Denver, and he definitely struggled in Carolina. If I'm going to beat Jimmy up for that, duck pass to Tevin Coleman on the sideline in the Panthers game, then I got to give him credit because both of those defensive ends were screaming in pretty much untouched. So the fact that he was even able to get the ball off is impressive, even if the actual pass itself didn't look so pretty and was clearly a 50-50 ball that could have been picked. But hey, Tevin Coleman went up and mossed the guy, and turned out to be a great play. So ultimately, how much bad can you say about it?
Right. Speaking of Tevin Coleman, let's go to the running backs. TDP, is he going to play? And Tevin Coleman, what the hell's going on? Where did that guy come from last week?
Yeah, I mean, Tico, I was not excited to see him coming back. I'll tell you.
Me neither.
I was like, oh no, Tevin Coleman, he's washed. Why are we bringing him back? And he's still got some spark, though. I mean, he's clearly, probably our best receiver out of the backfield, except for Juice, but our best receiving running back. You know, so yeah, I just don't pound him up the middle. That's not his thing. Do the sweeps. He might be as good or better than Elijah Mitchell on those not sweeps, but the pitch plays around the outside. So he looked good at those. He looked good catching the ball. Obviously, the big one we've been talking about along the left sideline, but he also caught a TD too and ran a TD in. So he was kind of the player of the game in some ways for the Niners. He and Jeff Wilson Jr. racking up the yards, right? And he had a rushing TD. So those two were outstanding. So yeah, Ty Davis Price will be ready to come back this week. I don't think we'll see much of him. I think that like when we cut Mac, I tweeted out, "Hey, welcome back TDP," because I figured that was the only reason why you'd let Mac go, is if Ty Davis Price was going to be able to at least be practicing and ready to play in a game. But I think it's going to be kind of like how Mason has been here. He had one carry for 7 yards, if I'm not mistaken, is all we've seen from him. Just the younger guys, Kyle is going to do everything he can to shield them from making mistakes. And I know one thing that I saw repeatedly through camp was that Ty Davis Price doesn't have good hands as a receiver. So that's going to limit your opportunities too. I think he's a pretty good pass blocker, but not 100%. I think he was at LSU, but I'm not sure how he's done as a pro. But so he is ready. He practiced today. I saw Nick Wagoner say that he was likely to be ready to go this weekend, but I just don't think we'll see much of him.
Yeah, two things as a Niner running back you got to be able to do. You got to be able to catch the ball, and you got to be able to block. Unfortunately, we have this unreal expectation of a blocking halfback because we had Frank Gore, who was like the ultimate running back and also an incredible pass blocker. I mean, he used to just smack guys. So yeah, and that's a big thing in this offense. You have to be able to pick up the blitz. I think that's in any offense. If you have a running back, if the running back is a liability in pass blocking, you have problems. You can't be a one-trick pony. Like, I run up the middle. No, you have to be able to you have to be able to multitask. You know what I mean? This isn't like somebody who works on a conveyor belt and just pushes one button all day. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like that in professional sports, especially like in baseball, for instance. If you got a guy who's like a platoon player, they're super valuable because they can play anywhere, usually in the infield or outfield. You know what I mean? And like, that's great because that's just one less person that you have to worry about. You know what I mean? And same thing in sports. If you have a running back that can catch and block and run. Like, man, he checks off a lot of boxes. If you have a guy who's lively in pass coverage or pass blocking, especially with this team, if you're going to take deep shots off play action, then you're right. He's not going to see the field. Kyle Shanahan plays his favorites. He is a guy that trusts people, and he goes with guys that he's done it with before. That's why Tevin Coleman coming back wasn't a big surprise. I just didn't think he would play as well as he did in that game, and he was like stupid good in that game for some reason. I don't know why. That one run up the right sideline he did, that juke, I don't know I was like, wow, what was that? Like, where did that come from? He looks healthy, too, to me. He looked pretty damn healthy, the fact that he hasn't played in a while. So we will see, man. It'll be interesting to see if any of these young backs get any run, late in the season, or if it's just going to be the Jeff Wilson Jr., Elijah Mitchell, and who am I missing? We were just talking about Tevin Coleman show. I think that's kind of where we're going to be going. I don't think the rookies see much action this year unless it's in like spot duty time at the end of a game or something. But yeah, exactly. Ty Alston said it best. Coleman is healthy and has fresh legs. He definitely looked like he had fresh legs on Sunday for sure. What do you make of the 49ers when they play these East Coast games back to back? They've stayed in, when they played in Cleveland, and was it Cleveland? No, it was in Cincinnati and somewhere else. Stayed on the East Coast. It seems to work out for them all the time. Right now they're in West Virginia. That's why I use it as my Instagram story song for this stream, because it just fit. What do you make of that? Is it a mental thing, or is it really help them just kind of like get closer? Like, it seems to do something with them winning games and being able to. I mean, it's happened more than once, and I don't know if they did that back in the Harbaugh era, but it's been something that they've done in the Shanahan Lynch era, and it seemed to have worked. What do you make of that?
Yeah, quick shout out, No Border Sports.
Ryan
said hi, so I wanted to.
What's going on, Ryan? He's one of my NWO brethren on Monday.
Nice. So with the whole East Coast junket, obviously there's acclimating your body to East Coast time, because the schedulers did us a big favor with the Carolina game, making it at 1 p.m. Pacific. If it had been 10 a.m., probably would have been a much closer game and might have had more injuries, to be honest. Hard to imagine more injuries than we saw, but I think it's possible. So that week gives you time to do that. It also, so that's just anywhere on the East Coast, right? But at the Allbriar, what's the name of the?
I forget. I know what you're talking about. I saw
the Briarwood or something like that. Anyway, the place where they stay in West Virginia, it's like in the middle of nowhere. And so there's a lot less trouble to get into there than staying in a city like Atlanta, which is like full of nightlife and strip clubs and all different kinds of things that could, tempt your players to stay out, drink, just get into trouble in general.
Into trouble.
Yeah. So I think that's part of it. And yeah, it's it gets the team together. I think a lot of times away games can be good for that. They usually stay at a hotel the night before home games, but this is several 7 nights together, and I think it just helps for team building to get everybody on the same page. And it's worked for us in the past. I think we've only lost one of the back-to-backs, and it was never the second one or something like that. So I think we're 7-1, or now I guess 8-1, and we'll see if we end up hopefully 9-1. Knock on wood.
Yeah, I mean, 2 teams that we should win against. I think that the scheduling gods did us good, because we're going to have some tough ones coming. I think this is a must-win, to be honest with you. Shasky thinks it's a trap game, which sometimes I feel like any game against a really, really bad team, when you're supposedly a team that is a chance to compete for the Super Bowl, is a trap game, just because fans get complacent, and you can say whatever you want. Players get complacent too. They look at the schedule and they be like, "Oh, those guys are ass," they suck.
And the more people that say it, the more complacent they get.
Yep. So
And
we'll see.
there's a second component to that trap game, though. It's not just a bad team. It's also with a really tough team the next week, with the Chiefs coming up, and everybody's starting to focus on the Chiefs and how we're going to stop Patrick Mahomes. And, that Chiefs D is really improved and, blah, 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 blah. And they lost Tyreek, but they've got all these other weapons now instead. And all of a sudden you forget about, Marcus Mariota and Drake London and Kyle Pitts and the team in front of you, and they jump up and beat you. In fact, it happened to us in 2019 with the Falcons, because I think we had the Rams the next week, if I'm not mistaken. And obviously we were it was a huge game. That game, I think we pretty much knocked the Rams out of the playoff contention with it. But I think people were looking past the Atlanta Falcons in 2019. They were a bad team, but they still have some key pieces, right? I mean, they still have Grady Jarrett. They still have AJ Terrell, who's an outstanding cornerback. And the two, tight end and receiver, I just mentioned Drake London and Kyle Pitts.
They
Good
definitely have
news
some
is
talent.
no Cordero Patterson, who is their leading rusher, and they're one of the leading rushing teams in the NFL. So that should hurt them a little. But, a lot of our run stuffers are missing, so it may end up being a wash. They may still run the ball pretty well against us.
I just want to get out of Atlanta with hopefully as many or as not with not a lot of injuries, or if not any new injuries, because Wanda Brown said it best: 4 games on turf, that's more game for injuries. And I totally agree. It seems like everybody should just have natural grass and be done with it. I'm sick of this. Kittle, he's like, and you were saying it. He's like, in the NBA, it's everyone has the same wood on their floor, and hockey, they have the same ice. In the NFL, everybody literally has different playing surfaces, which makes absolutely no sense. The fact that teams used to go to Philadelphia and play on that rug where it had seams all over the place and guys would just blow their knees out. Like, how is that even possible in a professional billion-dollar sport? But it is. I don't understand why. I think it should be across the board. And maybe the league listens to Kittle. Maybe teams, maybe players in the next collective bargaining agreement bring it up as something that they want to see changed. I mean, it's not like it's changing the game or changing the rules. It's just making the playing surfaces equal. And look at what Arizona does. They roll that turf outside, and then when it gets time for the game, they roll it back inside. They get it watered, they get the sun on it, and then they reel it back indoors. I'm sure they can do that. I mean, I don't know how they would do that, say, like in Buffalo or something, but I mean, they'd have to figure something out. And that's probably what's going to be the determining factor still, is you're going to have teams like Buffalo or a team like Green Bay, or not Green Bay, but just other teams. Minnesota, they're a cold climate. They can't grow grass outside. They would have to have some sort of greenhouse outside their stadium, which I'm sure it would be super expensive. But I mean, we'll see. I would love to see the NFL do something about it. But it's not a head injury type thing. So I don't think the NFL is going to take it as seriously. No one's going to sue them for it. So they don't have an image problem with their AstroTurf like they did with head injuries. So there's nothing to gain from it. So for me, I don't think it's going to change, but I understand Kittle's the Kittle situation when he was talking about. But
yeah, I mean, I think ultimately you got a bunch of billionaires that run these teams,
mm-hmm.
and Goodell is just a figurehead. He is just there to keep them happy. He is not there to police them in any way.
Exactly.
And so there is no one to do it except for fans. I think I always think if enough people tweet about it, or protest with their wallets by not buying tickets or whatever, that could help too. So
that would be the only. I think that would be the only way, is if it affected their money. And then be like, maybe we should think about it. Other than that, I don't think it's going to have much traction.
Probably not.
Let's go to predictions for the game. Score. I'll let you go first, and then I'll give my prediction.
Okay. I just will make a caveat that I don't really do my official score until about an hour before the game when I see the inactive list for both teams to see
Okay.
who's really playing and who isn't. That being said, I do think the Niners will win. I think it'll be pretty close. I mean, I think I don't know. What are we favored by? Have you?
I haven't looked.
Let me check real quick. But not that determines my pick. But I mean, I'm thinking like 4 to 6 point win, somewhere in that range, which is kind of a weird football score. Maybe more like 4 or 5 point win. So Niners are favored by 5.5. So
Wow.
I'd say a little bit less than that. And typically, if you're favored by 5.5, you win by more than that, right? I mean, usually it's more like 7 or 8 if you're favored by 5.5. But I'm going to go ahead and just say like 4 points, which is a strange score, but
I think 27-17. I think it's close. I think the Niners pull away late with the late long drive touchdown. The game's close. They get the ball. They eat clock. Keep their defense on the sideline, and they just pound away at Atlanta and find a way to get this game done and over with quickly, which would be running the ball and eating clock. That's the best way. The best way for the 49ers to kind of escape a ton of injuries in this game is to just play a really like 35 carry bore fest football where Jimmy throws for like 17 times or something, and the Niners just run the ball continuously, because that's how you keep your defense off the field, right? Is ball control.
yeah.
And
I'll say 24-20 then.
Pretty close. I thought last week's going to be close. Me and Jay in the Bay did a show on Saturday. He thought the Niners were going to blow the doors off of them, and they ended up doing it. But it was close for a bit. So like, I thought my prediction was going to come true, and I was about to like beat my chest and be like, "What did I tell you?" But he was right. The Niners blew the doors off, but it was close for a bit until when that defensive touchdown happened. I think that was pretty much the life that sucked out of Carolina last week.
Yeah, like you, I thought it would be closer than it was. I thought we'd win by 2 scores, and we won by 3. So
yeah, I thought it was going to be a very, very close game. Can't win every time somebody predicts a game against a bad team, they think we're going to score like 50 points. It's like, guys, like, when is this offense, at least this year, showing you that they have the ability to score over 30? Let's chill out a little bit.
exactly.
Just want to say what's up real quick to my buddy Bashar as we wrap this stream up. Appreciate you coming through, even if it's at the end. Don't matter. What do you think? I know that this is, after this we'll get out of here. But what's your take on the Jimmy Ward situation? As far as like, a lot of fans wanted to see him possibly play with a club on his hand. I don't think that's the case. I think the Niners are trying to do him right injury wise with that whole situation, and seeing how he reacts after I don't know, was it 10 days or something like that with the cast. I don't think we're going to get a game where we're going to see him with the giant wrapped hand in the game. I don't think that's happening.
I mean, not as a starter. I think we'll see him here and there. It was interesting that after he broke his hand on kick coverage, he did line up on defense, and they had him at the the weak linebacker position, which I thought was interesting because normally that's Dre Greenlaw's position. Normally Dre plays weak and Aziz plays strong, and then strong comes out when the nickel corner comes in. So anyway, they had Jimmy Ward at the strong side linebacker. So I could see him maybe some there, because I don't think you need your hand that much for playing in there. And he's a good coverage guy, but yeah, I don't think he'll be playing starter minutes. I think it'd just be to make sure that once his hand is ready, he's in perfect game shape so he can come in and play starter minutes as soon as that hand is 100% and the club is off.
There's a little bit of a conversation going on in the comments about, would the narrative change with Jimmy if they won a Super Bowl? Listen, at the end of the day, if the Niners win the Super Bowl and Jimmy's a quarterback, I really don't care. Will the narrative be, should we keep him and get rid of Trey? That would be probably one of the dumbest things the Niners could do. If anything, it gives them, I don't know about you, Ted, but if the Niners were to win the Super Bowl with Jimmy and they moved on from him after, that would give Trey kind of like less pressure because they have, say what you want, but like them winning the Super Bowl, I think would almost, in the fans' eyes, give the Niners a little bit of like an excuse if they decide to take a step back with Trey Lance and have him take over. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all depends on how Jimmy plays, right? If Jimmy gets carried like he did every other playoff game and in the other Super Bowl we played in, then it doesn't really help his position. It's just the same old, and that's what I expect. If Jimmy really has been improving and keeps improving and you know, plays well and helps carry us to a Super Bowl win, let's have that conversation when it happens because I mean, then it gets really interesting, right? Especially with Trey missing 2020 with COVID, missing 2021 with red shirt, really most of it, one game, 2 games, and then a game and a quarter in 2022 injury. I mean, let's see how he is after his injury and let's see how he's playing. But I mean, I honestly felt like Trey was better than Jimmy right now. I felt like he had 143 yards gained by his offense in less than a quarter against the Seattle Seahawks. And Jimmy had under 105 yards per quarter average after that. And when they also played the same opponent, that happened in 2021 as well too, when Jimmy strained his calf. Trey outscored him 14-6 and had way better stats. Um, so yeah, I mean, unless Jimmy shows market improvement and really helps to contribute to win instead of just being there when we win, then I don't see why we keep him around next season.
To me, I think there will be a narrative for the people that just love him and don't like Trey. The smart ones, and I never thought I would say this, but a guy like Stephen A. Smith, if Jimmy doesn't contribute in that Super Bowl, he'll be the first person to be like, "Man, he got carried. He didn't do anything to help us win." And I would hope to hear that because I know he's not a big proponent for Jimmy Garoppolo, as I am not either. But you're right. If Jimmy was to contribute to that Super Bowl, then that would be a great discussion to have. But let's beat the Atlanta Falcons this week, and then we'll worry about the Super Bowl if we make it. But just want to say thank you to everybody that is part of the stream tonight. Appreciate you guys showing up the last 3 days. I have had 3 streams in 3 days. It's, for me, that's a lot because there was times where I was having one or week or nothing. So I appreciate all the support. Me and Ted eventually will be on Ted's channel once he gets everything up and running. So I'll help Ted kind of do this social media thing of kind of letting us know we're going to switch back and forth, get him some subs, some views, and get him kind of going too. So I can't wait for that because that means I don't have to work. I can just sit there and answer. So thanks everybody for coming in here. I will see you guys Friday with Amin the Dream and special guest Rohan Chakravarthi. I asked him if he wanted to be part of it. He said yes. Amin thinks it's cool. So hopefully you guys join us Friday. We'll talk Carolina. Yeah, we'll talk Atlanta. Probably bang on some similar topics, and then we'll get all excited for the game this Sunday, and hopefully the Niners win. So thanks to everybody for coming in here. I enjoyed everybody being in here. I enjoyed me and Ted's conversation. Until next time, guys, stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you on the other side. Peace.
Thanks, Aaron.